The rain started just before midnight. I was standing at the kitchen window, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea, staring into the slick darkness beyond the glass. The rain came in fine silver needles, hissing against the roof and streaking down the panes. The kind of rain that seemed endless. The kind that turned the world into a blurred smear of black and gray. I've always liked storms, until tonight. Natalie, my roommate, had left earlier for an overnight shift at the hospital, which meant I had the old house to myself. I didn't usually mind, the place was quiet, spacious, and cheap enough to overlook its quirks. But this house had a personality, one I sometimes wasn't sure I liked. The floorboards popped when no one was walking on them. Doors never closed completely, no matter how hard you pushed. A draft whispered through the halls like something trying to get in, even when all the windows were locked. Tonight, though, it felt different. The feeling started about an hour ago. A low, creeping unease, like a strand of fishing line had been looped around my spine and tugged. I'd been curled on the couch scrolling my phone when I heard it, soft, deliberate footfalls in the hall upstairs. I froze. Natalie wasn't home. The upstairs light was off. I held my breath, waiting for them to stop, or for something else to happen. After a long 30 seconds of silence, I told myself it was just the house settling. But even now, standing at the kitchen window with the storm chewing at the glass, the feeling had gotten heavier. My skin prickled. Every sound in the house seemed too sharp. I set my mug down and glanced toward the hallway. The kitchen light only reached so far before shadows swallowed everything. The narrow hall led toward the base of the stairs, the darkness at the top thick and unmoving. I considered calling Natalie, but she'd just laugh and tell me to put on a movie. I turned back toward the living room, flicking off the kitchen light. The house seemed to grow heavier without it. I tried distracting myself with a show, but halfway through the opening scene, the TV flickered and the sound cracked, like static. The lights dimmed for a heartbeat, then surged back on. That's when I heard it again. Footsteps. 3 slow, deliberate steps above me. I stared at the ceiling, my pulse pounding. Natalie? My voice sounded small, stupid. No answer. I rose from the couch and moved toward the stairs without meaning to. The first step groaned under my weight. I stopped halfway up, straining to hear. The rain pounded the roof, and for a moment, I thought the sound had stopped, until I heard 4 more steps, slower this time. They were inside my bedroom. I froze, every explanation scrambling in my head at once. Maybe I'd left a window open and the wind was blowing something around. Maybe a raccoon had found its way in. But deep down, I knew better. I pictured someone standing in my room, waiting for me to come closer. I backed down the stairs and grabbed my phone from the couch. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. Before I could press call, a sound floated down the stairs. A soft hum. It was tuneless, broken, like someone trying to remember a melody they'd never actually learned. I hit the call button. Instead of ringing, there was silence. Then, that same hum came through the speaker. I dropped the phone. It hit the rug with a muffled thud, and the hum stopped instantly. A single heavy footstep creaked at the top of the stairs. My breath came fast. I ran into the kitchen and yanked open the drawer, grabbing the biggest knife I could find. My fingers slipped on the handle. Another step came, slower than the last. I bolted for the back door, twisted the lock, and pulled, but the door wouldn't budge. I unlocked it again and shoved with my shoulder. Nothing. It felt like something heavy was pressed against it from outside. The next step was lower on the stairs. I looked at the front door. Maybe. The doorknob rattled. Just once. Slow. I froze in place. The air in the kitchen was cold enough to sting my skin. Upstairs, my bedroom door slammed shut. The sound cracked through the house like a gunshot. My chest tightened. Was whoever it was leaving, or locking themselves in? I edged toward the front door, every nerve in my body screaming to get out. My feet barely made a sound on the hardwood, but the moment I reached the entryway, I saw movement, just barely, at the top of the stairs. Someone was standing there. It wasn't Natalie. The figure was tall, thin, and wrong in a way I can't explain. It wasn't just standing in shadow, it was shadow. I couldn't see its face. I blinked. It was gone. I threw the front door open and ran into the rain. Cold water soaked me instantly, but I didn't care. I tore down the steps barefoot, sprinting into the street. Halfway across the yard, I looked back. The figure was on the porch now, still as stone, watching me. It didn't follow. By the time I reached my neighbor's house, screaming for help, I realized something awful. The humming hadn't stopped. And it wasn't coming from the house anymore. It was inside my head. I was 14. It was an average night, around 9 p.m., me and my little cousin are at his house. I'm babysitting for the night while my mom and aunt are shopping and my dad and uncle are at the movie theater, so we're sitting there and I was feeling really strange. Something was wrong but I couldn't put my finger on it, so I just kept watching TV with my cousin. The feeling wasn't going away, so I got up and walked to the back door to lock it. When I came back through the kitchen I saw what was causing my weird feeling. In the window there was a very decrepit and homeless-looking man. Just staring into the window, looking at my cousin. Protective mode turned on. I pretended like I didn't see the guy and I told my little cousin that we needed to go upstairs because our parents would be home soon and they wouldn't want him to be staying up late, so I went upstairs and put him to bed, knowing damn well that there was a man outside that wanted in. I was about 125 pounds and 5 feet 8 inches at the time and I played football for my school. If I remember correctly, I went downstairs and straight into the kitchen and grabbed one of those meat tenderizing hammers, turned back to the window where I saw him before. Not there. Ran back to the front door and checked that it was locked. Both the deadbolt and the knob were locked. Ran back upstairs with my meat tenderizer and went into my cousin's room and sat down in front of the door. He asked me what I was doing and I said that he didn't need to worry about it and that he should keep his head low. Called the cops and then my dad and uncle. Cops would take half an hour and my dad and uncle were 45 minutes away. Then I hear a window shatter and the sound of heavy boots walking around on the main floor. I told my cousin to stay calm, hide under the covers and to keep silent. I could hear the guy walking around downstairs. It was horrifying. I gripped that damn meat tenderizer and waited. About 5 minutes pass and then I hear the boots walking upstairs. At this point I was having a freaking heart attack. My cousin's door is no more than 10 feet from the stairs. I heard him opening the doors to my aunt and uncle's room, then the bathroom. He walked back downstairs and I heard him open the door to the basement. 15 minutes later the police showed up and burst into the house. Turned out the guy was loose from a mental hospital 1 province away. TLDR, I nearly had to battle a mental case when I was 14. At one point I was no more than a wooden door and 10 feet away from him. I was halfway through brushing my teeth when I heard it. 3 sharp knocks. They weren't at the door, or at least, not at the front door. The sound came from somewhere deeper in the house, muffled but close enough to cut through the hum of the bathroom fan. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth, listening. Nothing. I spat, rinsed, and turned the fan off. The silence pressed in immediately. I heard the tick of the hallway clock, the faint creak of the old pipes, and then 3 knocks again. Slower this time. I stepped into the hall, every hair on my arm standing on end. My place is small, living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and I know the way sound moves through it. These knocks were coming from my bedroom. The only problem was, I'd just been in there 10 minutes ago. And the window was locked. "Hello?" I called, instantly regretting it. No answer. I grabbed my phone from the counter and started recording, because I figured if something weird was happening, I wanted proof. The screen read 3:17 a.m. I crept toward my bedroom. The door was open just a crack, and I swear it hadn't been like that before. I reached out and pushed it slowly. The hinges groaned. The room looked exactly the same as I'd left it, bed unmade, laundry pile in the corner, lamp still on. I took a step inside. My floorboards complained under my weight. And then something knocked back. 3 knocks. But this time, they were under my bed. I nearly dropped my phone. Logic told me to get the hell out, but my body moved without me. I knelt, heart slamming against my ribs, and leaned down to look. It was dark under there, too dark. My eyes should have adjusted, but it was like staring into ink. I couldn't even see the wall on the other side. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It was so faint I thought I imagined it, but the words were clear, "You're late." I shot up so fast I hit my head on the bed frame. I backed out of the room, slammed the door, and pressed my ear against it. Silence. I ran for the front door and yanked it open. The night air was cold enough to sting my lungs. I stood there, barefoot on the porch, trying to decide if I was losing my mind. Behind me, from inside the house, came 3 more knocks. This time, from the front door I was holding open. I don't have kids. That's what made it so weird. The box was waiting on my porch when I got home from work, just sitting there, rain-speckled under the dim glow of the porch light. No shipping label. No return address. Just my name scrawled in thick, uneven black marker across the top. Inside was an old-fashioned baby monitor. Not the kind with a video screen, but the older style, small, white plastic speaker, a big red power switch on top. The plastic had yellowed with age, and a hairline crack ran across the side like it had been dropped at some point. A note was taped to the back in blocky handwriting. "Keep it on. It's for your safety." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the kind of thing you have to laugh at or you'll get the chills. The whole thing felt like a prank, and the prankster in question had apparently gone to the trouble of finding something that looked like it came straight out of a thrift store. Still, I couldn't quite bring myself to throw it away. I set it on my kitchen counter, shrugged it off, and forgot about it until that night. It was almost midnight when I finally wandered into my bedroom. I noticed the monitor sitting there in the corner, looking somehow out of place in my apartment. I should have just tossed it then, but instead, I picked it up and carried it to my nightstand, just to see if it worked. I plugged it in, flipped the red switch, and immediately heard a faint hiss of static. For the first hour, that was all there was, soft white noise, almost comforting. I was just starting to drift off when I heard something underneath it. A faint, rhythmic creak. I froze, straining to hear. It was steady, slow, like the sound of a rocking chair moving back and forth. Then, beneath the creak, I caught the low, muffled sound of breathing. My stomach dropped. "Hello?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The creaking stopped. And then a voice came through. It was soft, low, almost tired. "Don't go in the kitchen." My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone I was in my bedroom. And I sure as hell hadn't moved. I set the monitor down, grabbed my phone, and crept to the bedroom door. The hallway was empty. The kitchen was dark. Then I saw it, my back door was open. Just an inch. I slammed it shut, locked it, and backed away, my skin crawling. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next evening, I thought about unplugging the monitor, but part of me was curious. And, in a strange way, I didn't want to stop listening. For hours, the static stayed the same. Then, at 2:43 a.m., it crackled again. The voice said, "Don't open the closet." I didn't even glance toward it. My closet door had been shut all night, but I didn't need to confirm. I sat perfectly still, the monitor in my peripheral vision like it was watching me. The rest of the night, I kept waiting for something, footsteps, knocks, movement, but the apartment stayed quiet. On the third night, things changed. At exactly 3 a.m. the static grew louder, sharper, almost like a storm was building on the other side of the signal. Then the voice came, this time urgent, rushed. "Don't answer the door." No one was knocking, but my heart was already pounding. 30 seconds later, 3 knocks echoed from my front door. I froze. They came again. Slow. Heavy. I didn't move. After a long pause, the sound of footsteps started down the hall outside my apartment, slow, deliberate, fading away into the distance. By the fourth night, I was terrified to sleep. I left all my lights on, sitting on the edge of my bed with the monitor humming beside me. At 1:12 a.m., it spoke again. This time, the voice was whispering so quietly I had to lean in. "They're already inside." The air in my apartment felt colder, heavier. My mouth went dry. I scanned the room, the hallway, every corner where the shadows seemed deeper than they should have been. I didn't see anything. But from somewhere near the kitchen, I heard the faint, rhythmic creak of that rocking chair again. The thing is, I don't own a rocking chair. The fifth night, I didn't turn the monitor on. I shoved it in a drawer, telling myself I was done with it. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke to static filling my room. It was on my nightstand again. The red switch was glowing. The voice said, "Why aren't you listening? I don't know why I still live here. The town's been half dead for years, the factory closed, and the only grocery store is 30 minutes away. In winter, the fog rolls in so thick it feels like you're underwater. People stay inside when that happens. Doors locked. Curtains drawn. Nobody talks about why, but I've lived here long enough to know there's a reason. I'd seen strange things in the fog before, shapes, faint lights, but I told myself it was just headlights, street lamps, or my imagination. Until last Thursday night. It started with the power going out. The house went from warm yellow light to pitch black in the span of a breath. I was in the living room, halfway through reheating soup, when the microwave shut off with a dull click. I sighed, grabbed my phone for a flashlight, and saw the fog outside pressing against the windows. Not drifting. Pressing. It looked denser than usual, pale and swirling like it had weight. I went to the front window, phone light off, and just watched. The street was gone, just a wall of white a few feet from my porch. The silence was total. Even the crickets were quiet. That's when I saw them. 2 small lights, faint at first, then sharper. Not moving like headlights, too slow, too steady. They hovered in the fog about 6 feet off the ground. I leaned closer to the glass. The lights flickered once, then twice, and I realized they weren't shining through the fog, they were inside it. And they were getting closer. I stepped back from the window, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to turn off the lights, to hide, but the power was already gone. The light stopped about 20 feet from my porch. That's when a third one appeared, lower to the ground. The 3 of them hung there, swaying slightly, like they were looking for something. Then, without warning, the middle one darted forward, fast. I yanked the curtains shut and stumbled back, every nerve on fire. The air in the room felt colder. I was still trying to make sense of it when I heard the first knock. It wasn't on the door. It was on the glass of the living room window, 3 sharp taps, spaced out like someone was letting me know they could wait all night. I didn't move. Another 3 taps came, this time from the back of the house. I crept to the kitchen, peeking out the small window above the sink. The fog was pressed right up against the glass. One of the lights floated there, bright enough to hurt my eyes. It pulsed once, twice, in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. I don't remember going to bed. I must have passed out from exhaustion. But I woke around 3:30 a.m. to the faint glow of light bleeding through the curtains. I knew without looking that the fog was still there. Then I realized something worse. The glow wasn't coming from outside the window. It was coming from inside the room. I turned my head slowly. One of the lights hovered in the corner near the ceiling. The pale beam didn't illuminate anything, but it made the shadows around it seem impossibly deep. I couldn't move. My body felt pinned to the mattress. The light drifted closer, soundless. When it was a foot from my face, I saw shapes moving inside it, thin, twisting things, like smoke caught in a jar. Something brushed my cheek. The light blinked out. I woke up at sunrise with no memory of falling asleep. The fog was gone. The street was clear. But there was something new. 3 pale circles, perfectly spaced, burned into the grass in my front yard. That was 5 nights ago. The fog came back last night. The lights came with it. And this time, they didn't stay outside. I think they're in the house right now. I'd been looking forward to this night all week. It's not that I don't like being around people, but I need my quiet time. My roommate, Jenna, had left early that morning to visit her parents for the weekend, and I had the house to myself. No small talk, no TV blaring in the background, no footsteps passing my bedroom door at random hours, just me, my couch, and a pile of streaming shows I'd been too tired to start after work. It was raining steadily, the kind of soft, constant drizzle that turns the air cool and keeps most people indoors. Perfect weather for being lazy. By 9:30, I'd finished the leftovers from the fridge and made myself a cup of tea. The streets outside were slick under the glow of the street lamps. My small house sat at the very end of a cul-de-sac, a quiet, unassuming neighborhood where nothing dramatic ever happened. I liked that about it. I was halfway through an old sitcom episode when I heard it, just faint enough at first that I wasn't sure I hadn't imagined it. A thin, metallic scraping against the living room window to my left. It lasted 2 or 3 seconds, then stopped. I paused the TV and listened. Nothing. Just the steady patter of rain against the roof. I figured it was probably the wind. Maybe some loose siding or a branch swaying. But as far as I could remember, there weren't any trees close enough to reach that window. Still, I got up, walked over, and gently pulled the curtain aside. Nothing. No branch, no leaves stuck to the glass. The street beyond was empty, shiny black pavement reflecting the yellow streetlight, a few puddles gathering in the dips in the asphalt. I let the curtain fall back into place. 15 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't coming from the living room. The sound was nearer to the front of the house. Slow. Deliberate. A harsh, dragging scrape along the front door. Every muscle in my body tensed. I muted the TV, straining to hear past the rain. The sound stopped almost immediately. I got up and moved quietly to the door, leaning toward the peephole. My heart thudded harder with every step. The porch was empty. No packages, no figures, no movement. I told myself it could have been a stray cat, but I'd never seen one in the neighborhood. And besides, that sound hadn't been claws, it had been something sharper. Something metal. Another 20 minutes passed. I tried to ignore the goosebumps creeping along my arms, but my eyes kept drifting to the shadows along the walls, as if something might be moving just out of sight. That's when I heard the third noise. It didn't come from the front. It came from the back of the house, my kitchen. There's a sliding glass door that leads to the backyard. The kind with thin, rattly panes that always make me feel exposed, even in daylight. The sound was different now, faster, more agitated. A scraping so quick it almost became a vibration. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Silence for a beat. Then, tapping. Light, deliberate, almost polite. I stood frozen in the hallway. The tapping continued, 3 beats at a time, like someone was knocking with just the tips of their fingers. I finally found my voice. "Hello?" The tapping stopped. I moved toward the kitchen, my phone already in my hand. I hadn't dialed 911 yet, but my thumb hovered over the keypad. The closer I got, the more I noticed the cold. The kitchen felt several degrees colder than the rest of the house, and the air smelled faintly damp, like wet leaves after a storm. I flicked the light on. The glass door was fogged over. Not on the outside. On the inside. I froze. I hadn't been near that door all night, and I hadn't cooked anything that could fog it up. My heart was hammering now, my mind scrambling for an explanation. There were streaks in the condensation. Handprints. 5 long, narrow marks where fingers had dragged down the glass. No, up the glass. From the bottom toward the top. I backed away slowly, phone shaking in my hand, and that's when I heard it again, the scraping. But this time, it wasn't coming from any one direction. It was all around me. Walls. Ceiling. Floor. Like something inside the house was dragging metal claws along the inner walls, moving too quickly for me to pinpoint where it was. I bolted for the front door, flung it open, and ran barefoot into the street. Rain soaked my clothes instantly, but I didn't care. I sprinted to my neighbor's house and pounded on their door until the porch light flicked on. The police searched my place from top to bottom. No broken locks. No footprints. No sign anyone had been there at all. But when I asked about the streaks on the glass door, one of the officers just frowned and asked if I'd touched it. I told him no. He didn't say anything, but I caught the way he glanced at his partner. The kind of glance that says, "You saw that too, right?" Because no human hand I've ever seen leaves marks that long. And no human fingers curl upward.